Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer on section 3.3 of your software engineering textbook. So, today we're setting the stage for why Agile project management is absolutely crucial. It's a massive pillar in modern software development and a core part of your university program. Honestly, if you want to build software in the real world, you really need to understand how to manage the whole process effectively.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll kick things off with the historical management problem, define our essential Scrum terminology, and walk through the actual sprint cycle. After that, we'll dive into the advantages of Scrum, how it adapts to global teams and distributed Scrum, and finally, wrap things up with an exam focus so you're totally ready for your tests.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the management problem. To really appreciate Scrum, we have to understand the massive friction that used to exist between early Agile teams and traditional corporate structures. Picture this. On one side, you have early Agile developers. They completely loved being self-organizing. They wanted minimal documentation, and they thrived on short development cycles. But on the other side, corporate managers. They needed visibility. They needed strict budget tracking and predictable schedules. Naturally, managers frankly hated the lack of visibility in those early Agile methods. So the big question was, how on earth do you keep the flexibility of Agile without losing control of the business side? Well, enter Scrum. Scrum was developed as this brilliant framework that provides the project management visibility the suits need without killing the Agile spirit that developers love.
Moving right along to Section 2, Essential Scrum Terminology. Before we can get into how this framework actually operates, we need to get our vocabulary straight. These aren't just corporate buzzwords, they are exact definitions you absolutely must know for this module. Let's break them down. First, the people. The development team is a self-organizing group of no more than 7 developers. The product owner is the person representing the business who prioritizes the work, and the Scrum Master is the one ensuring the process is actually followed. Now for the process itself. The product backlog is essentially your master to-do list. That list fuels a sprint, which is a 2 to 4 week development cycle. Every day, the team has a quick face-to-face meeting called a Scrum. To figure out how much work to take on, they calculate their velocity, which is an estimate of their pacing. And the ultimate goal? Producing a potentially shippable product increment at the very end of that cycle.
Now, I want to pause and proactively address a major misconception students always seem to have. A Scrum Master is responsible for ensuring the Scrum process is followed, yes, but they also shield the team from outside interference. You need to cement this in your minds. A Scrum Master is a facilitator and a protector. They are not, I repeat, not a traditional boss dictating what to do. The development team self-organizes and decides how to tackle the work. The Scrum Master just makes sure the rules are respected and clears any roadblocks out of the way. Another term that usually trips people up is velocity. Simply put, this is an estimate of how much product backlog effort a team can cover in a single sprint. It's basically a measure of a team's performance based entirely on their past work. It dictates exactly how much work they can realistically pull into their upcoming cycle. This is super important because it stops the team from overcommitting and burning out. Okay, with those definitions locked in, we are ready to look at the mechanics of Scrum.
Which brings us nicely to Section 3, the sprint cycle.
So how do all these terms interact chronologically to actually build software? The whole flow is incredibly logical. The input to the entire machine is the product backlog. From there, we move into a planning phase, dive straight into the circular sprint itself, kept on track by those daily scrums, and on the other side, we output a potentially shippable product increment.
Let's break that exact flow down step by step so you can get it in your notes. Step 1, the product owner prioritizes the items in the product backlog. Step 2, the development team selects the highest priority items they actually believe they can finish, based directly on their historical velocity. Step 3, that selection officially becomes the sprint backlog. Step 4, throughout the sprint, the team holds those daily scrums to track their everyday progress. And finally, Step 5, the sprint wraps up with a review meeting to evaluate the software they built and figure out how to improve their internal process for next time. Now here is a golden rule of Scrum you absolutely must remember. Sprints are fixed 2 to 4 week cycles. Once a sprint starts, absolutely no new work can be added. None. This strict rule is literally what protects the developers from moving targets. Timelines are never, ever extended. If a piece of work isn't finished, it just goes right back into the product backlog for the next round. And to keep everyone on the same page, physical Scrum boards are often used to maintain constant, crystal clear visibility of what is done, what's in progress, and what is still left to do.
Next up, Section 4, Advantages of Scrum.
Why has this specific framework taken over the software industry? Well, because it genuinely benefits everyone involved. The product is broken down into manageable chunks that stakeholders can actually understand. Unstable requirements don't paralyze the project anymore because you're only ever planning a few weeks ahead anyway. You get incredibly high team visibility and much better morale. Customers absolutely love it because there are no last-minute delivery surprises. They get to see working software at the end of every single short sprint. Ultimately, delivering manageable chunks on time builds immense trust between the customers and the developers. And honestly, that trust is the biggest advantage of the entire framework.
But what happens when the team isn't sitting in the same office? Let's move to Section 5, Distributed Scrum.
Scrum was originally designed for co-located teams, people physically in the same room. But we live in the reality of globalized software engineering, where developers might be spread across entirely different continents. When team members are scattered across time zones, you have to creatively adapt the framework using technology and social practices to keep the whole thing from falling apart. To pull off distributed Scrum, there are some very strict requirements. You absolutely have to have video conferencing and instant messaging for real-time informal chats. You need continuous integration so everyone on the globe knows the exact state of the codebase at any given second. The Scrum Master should ideally be co-located with the developers to handle local everyday problems. And here is a massive social requirement. The product owner must periodically make physical site visits to the developers. You simply cannot build software effectively across the globe without establishing that fundamental face-to-face human trust.
All right, we've covered a lot of highly testable ground today. Let's head into Section 6, Summary and Exam Focus.
Listen closely, because this is what you need for your upcoming exams. First, you must memorize all 8 definitions from the Scrum terminology perfectly. Second, be able to trace the exact chronological flow of the sprint cycle, from the product backlog right through to that final review meeting. And finally, conceptually understand how Scrum successfully bridged that initial gap between the freedom of Agile developers and the strict visibility required by corporate managers. Nailing this balance perfectly sets up our next topic, where we'll explore scaling these Agile methods across even larger organizations.
Before you pack up, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. By formalizing agility to satisfy corporate managers, creating strict roles like Scrum Masters and enforcing rigid sprint rules, do we risk losing the very flexibility that made Agile software development so revolutionary in the first place? Think critically about this paradox of structured agility as you review your notes today. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep up the great work, and I will see you in the next one.